Institutional transformation does not happen by chance. It takes clarity of vision, consistent leadership. Dr. Himanshu Rai represents that journey. As director of IIM Indore, he has led the institute through a defining phase of growth, strengthening its academic depth, global presence, and institutional framework. Under his leadership, IIM Indore earned the prestigious Triple Crown accreditation, a distinction held by fewer than 1% of business schools worldwide. He has elevated the institute's position in national and international rankings while driving meaningful institutional reforms. Beyond academia, he is a prolific author and columnist with several acclaimed books to his credit, contributing thoughtfully to leadership and management. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Himanshu Rai.
All right, I was planning to write an autobiography, but clearly no point because you already know everything about me. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. And it's my privilege as the chairperson of the board of the Indore Management Association to welcome you to the 33rd IMA International Management Conclave. You know, we gather at an extraordinary movement and an extraordinary moment in India's history. Let me begin not with sentiment, but with some data. India today is the fastest growing major economy in the world, with projected growth rates consistently above 6 to 7%. We are now a $4+ trillion economy on the threshold of becoming $5 trillion economy. We are home to one of the largest startup ecosystems globally, with over 100 unicorns and thousands of emerging ventures. Nearly 65% of our population is under 35 years of age, an unprecedented demographic dividend. Our digital public infrastructure, from financial inclusion to real-time payments, is being studied and replicated globally. And of course, our higher education is growing leaps and bounds, with 9 Indian institutions featuring in the Financial Times 100 list recently, third only to the United States and the United Kingdom. Of course, IIM Indore being a part of those 9 makes me extra proud. Now, these are not just isolated statistics. They represent confidence, capability, and conviction. India is not merely participating in the global conversation. India is shaping it. And yet, the question before us is deeper. Will we innovate by imitation, or will we innovate from identity? And that is why this year's theme, Innovating India, Swadeshi, Swabhavik, Swanirmit, is not a slogan. It's a stance that we have taken. It's a position that we have taken at IMA. Swadeshi, innovation that is rooted in the Indian context and capability. Swabhavik, solutions emerging from our intrinsic strengths and lived realities. And Swanirmit, excellence that is crafted through self-belief, determination, discipline, and responsibility. So what are the challenges that we are going to face? I think the biggest challenge is that we are entering into what I call the Bani world. The B of the Bani stands for brittle. For example, the global supply chains, which we thought were rock solid. Along came COVID. We were thinking that the world is a global village. Along comes COVID, and suddenly the countries were shut down. Within the countries, states were shut down. Within the states, the cities were shut down. And therefore, what we realized was that what we considered as rock solid is actually turning out to be brittle. And I'm not just talking about supply chains here. Look at the relationships. In fact, I was having a discussion, very oddly, with Swami Brahma Vihariji of the Babs Temple, Abu Dhabi. And what was supposed to be a 10-minute meeting ended up as a 1.5-hour discussion on artificial intelligence. And one of the things that we said was that AI is making relationships brittle. People don't have real friends now. People have Facebook friends. People are seeking likes and love signs instead of actually going out and talking to real human beings. And therefore, the relationships that we thought were supposed to be rock solid, were supposed to be the foundations, are actually getting crumbled a little bit. And that is something we need to watch out for. The A of my Bani stands for anxious. The world is really anxious. The world is anxious about geopolitics. The world is anxious about artificial intelligence. Every fora that I go to, there's one question which is always asked, is AI going to replace human beings? And so far, I have been answering, no, AI is not going to replace human beings, but people who use AI and know AI are going to replace those who don't know and don't use AI. But now, even I'm not very sure. You know, we use AI in 4 different dimensions. One was as an answer, so like a smart Google, you ask a question, it gives you an answer. The second was as an assistant to create some things for you. For example, your speeches that you might be giving today. And then was agentic, when you make AI your agent and you create an avatar and AI talks to other people just like it was you. And finally, autonomous. And I had always laughed at it, nah, AI can never become autonomous. AI can't start making decisions. And right after I made that statement, a week later, a fringe party in Japan, after losing an election, made a chatbot their leader. And they're taking the directions from the chatbot. So whether AI will become autonomous or not, we are making AI autonomous. And therefore, there's a lot of anxiety around it. The N of the Bani stands for non-linear. Seemingly unconnected things actually seem to have a causality effect. For example, when the war between Russia and Ukraine entered into its 4th month, the real estate prices in Dubai started shooting up. Now, you might say, hey, hang on, that must be a correlation. No, there was a causality. And the causality was that the riches of those 2 countries, realizing that the war is going to go way beyond their expectations, started taking their money out. And where do you park it? Real estate. And where's the best real estate? Dubai. So war in one region of the world leading to real estate shooting up in another region of the world. That is a non-linearity that I'm talking about. And finally, I stands for incomprehensible. And I'm not just talking about Trump's mind. I'm talking about other things also which are really incomprehensible. For example, climate change. We thought that we understood climate change and we said, oh, if we keep the global temperature rise to less than 2 degrees centigrade, everything is going to be hunky-dory. And then we said, no, hang on. Not 2 degrees centigrade, but 1.5 degrees centigrade. And now we are saying, we really don't know. Look at the weather. It's really messed up. From 4 seasons, we have come down to 3 seasons. There has been no spring this time in Indore. From winter, we straight away went into the summer. And therefore, to actually create the India that we have in our imagination, we need to traverse through this Bani world. And therefore, I give to you my Bani 2.0. And the first B of my Bani 2.0 stands for bravery. Because please remember one thing, without courage, practicing any other value is impossible. When Arjun started shivering, right in the beginning of the Mahabharata, looking at who is going to fight, he said, Madhusudan, मैं इनसे नहीं लड़ सकता, सामने देखिए ये भीष्म पितामह हैं, ये द्रोण हैं, ये कृप हैं. That is when Krishna told him, Kshudram hridayam daurvalyam tyaktam uttishta parantapa. क्षुद्र हृदय की दुर्बलता को त्यागो और उठो परंतप. परंतप का अर्थ है शत्रुओं का संहारक, the slayer of the enemies. And what Krishna was painting and was pointing out was that the enemy is not what you see there. The enemy is here. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, what we have to practice is bravery. We have to build fortitude. We have to get over the fear of failure. Please remember one thing. Several lovely things were spoken about me while I was being introduced. But if I have taken 10 initiatives, 1 or 2 of them have failed. If I've made 10 decisions, 1 or 2 of them have gone awry. Please remember, simply because you have failed in 1 or 2 things does not make you a failure. You become a failure the day you stop trying. The theme of our last year management conclave was Uddamen hi siddhyanti. And what is it about? Uddamen hi siddhyanti karyani na manorathai nahi suptasya singhasya pravishanti mukhe brigaha. If a lion were to open his mouth, the deer is not going to come and sit inside. The lion will have to go out and hunt. Why am I talking about lions to a bunch of executives and entrepreneurs over here? Because I don't know how many of you know this, but a lion succeeds in his hunt only once in 4 attempts. Now imagine you're a lion and you're chasing your prey and you fail. What would the lion do? Would the lion sit down with his mouth open and wait for the prey to sit and come inside? No. The lion rests, takes a few deep breaths, bhasrika pranayam karta, punah daudta hai. The lion fails again, rests again, chases again, fails again, but the 4th time when the lion chases, that's when he gets the prey. The moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen, is hard work in life is necessary, but not sufficient. Beyond hard work, you need to have the patience, you need to have the perseverance, you need to have the resilience, you need to have the grit, that even if you fail, even if you fall, even if you stumble, you continue getting up and walking towards a path that you have chosen for yourself. And fail you will, because you're trailblazing. Who doesn't fall? Only those who are walking on a path that has been walked by millions before. And therefore, the best lesson that I got about bravery was obviously from my mountaineering. For those of you who don't know me, I was very fortunate to be taught mountaineering by Bachendri Pal, the first Indian woman to climb Mount Everest. She's my mountaineering guru and of course now a very close friend. I still remember this was our third, fourth expedition together. And it was a technical peak that we had to climb. So we got out at 11 in the night because that's when we attempt the summit. I looked at the peak and I gave up. I said, Bachendri, I don't think I could do that. Bachendri didn't say a word. She said, all right, Himanshu. If you don't think you can do it, you can't. But, we can't go back to sleep. We're already up. So why don't we trek a bit? And we'll trek for about 30, 45 minutes and we'll come back. I said, all right. It was a moonlit night. So we did not even need our headlamps to trek. We walked for about 30, 45 minutes. And then Bachendri said, Himanshu, shall we go back? I looked back and I saw how far we were from our advance camp. I looked back at the peak again. And suddenly, the peak did not look that difficult. And I said, Bachendri, let's continue. We continued and we summited. And the lesson that I learned was every time you feel that something cannot be done, take the first step. Take the first step and you will realize things are not so difficult. And then Bachendri said something which is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. She said, Himanshu, at any point of time, if you think that things are very difficult, things are impossible, just look back. Look back at what you have achieved already. And then draw your courage and draw your strength from all of those achievements. So ladies and gentlemen and everyone out here, any time in your life, in your future, if you think that something cannot be done, look back to this day. Look back to this day when you would have heard from 21 extremely successful and wonderful people about what life is all about. Draw everything from the strength, draw everything from the accomplishments that you have had at that point of time in your life, and then continue walking on the path that you have chosen for yourself. That is bravery. Bravery is something that needs to be practiced. The A of my Bani 2.0 stands for adaptability. Adaptability. Whenever you're faced with certain issues, certain challenges, always divide them into two categories. One is called areas of control. The other is called areas of concern. Areas of control are those things which are in your hand. Areas of concern are those things which are not in your hand. For example, if I have to take the example of COVID again, how's the damn virus going to mutate? When will the vaccine come? Not in our control. It was an area of concern. What was in our control? Wear a mask, maintain personal distance, build your immunity. And therefore, instead of focusing and spending your time, energy, and resources on areas of concern, focus on areas of control. Likewise, economy. How's the economy going to do? What is the status of tariffs going to be? Not in our control. Areas of concern. What is in our control? To make sure that we build resilience in our industry as industrial people and as individuals, to make sure that we are differentiating between our needs and our desires. I see many people facing this challenge, that they start equating the money that they have with the amount of control that they have in their lives. They start equating money with self-respect, money with self-worth. Now, I'm not trying to be condescending towards money. It'll be extremely stupid of me to be condescending towards money in a management conclave such as this. But do understand, money is what money does. Nothing more, nothing less. And therefore, if instead of focusing on how much money you have, if you focus on what do you really need that money for, you will realize that you have enough. The only thing that you need to do is to differentiate between your need and your desire. आवश्यकता और इच्छा के बीच में भिन्नता करिए. क्यों? क्योंकि इच्छाएं तो असीमित हैं. यज्जाग्रतो दूर मुदैति दैवं तदु सुप्तस्य तथैवैति. दूरम गमम ज्योतिषाम ज्योतिरेकम तन्मे मनः शिव संकल्पमस्तु. The human mind has a tendency to go as far in the state of wakefulness as it does while it is asleep, and this human mind is full of desires. can you control your desires and focus on your need? And what do I mean by that? You know, every time people talk about sustainable living, they talk about 3 R's. They say reduce, reuse, recycle. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the 4th R. And I want you to make it your first R. And that is refuse. Can you refuse? Do I need another suit? Maybe not. Do I need another tie? Maybe not. Do you need another car in a family of 3? Maybe not. Only if you can't refuse, reduce. And then make sure that whatever you have reduced, you also reuse and recycle. That is the meaning of adaptability. The N of my Bani 2.0 stands for never say never. Never say never. Everything is possible provided you have the strength of your conviction. I'll give you 3 examples, which are my favorite examples. Lord Kelvin, the chemist, the famous chemist, in 1895 made a statement, heavier than air flying machines are impossibles. Lo and behold, 7 years later, 1902, Wright brothers flew the first aircraft. And Montgomery brothers were doing so also in France. Sir Frederick Upcott in 1900, mark his statement. He says, do you mean to say that Tatas proposed to make steel rails to the British specification? Why? I will undertake to eat every pound of steel rail that they succeed in making. 1907, the steel plant in Sakshi, which is now called Jamshedpur, came up. 1912, first steel ingot rolled out. And we were trying to figure out where was Sir Frederick Upcott at that point of time, because he must have had a severe case of indigestion. A politician, and I'm not going to name him, in 2017 made a statement, you cannot go to a village and talk about cashless economy. You go there and people ask, what digital? Ladies and gentlemen, in January 2026 alone, last month, 21.7 billion UPI transactions worth rupees 28.33 lakh crore have happened in our country itself. And therefore, always remember, hai kaun vigna aisa jag mein tik sake veer nar ke mag mein kham thok thelta hai jab nar parvat ke jate paon ukhad manav jab jor lagata hai patthar pani ban jata hai. And finally, the I of my Bani 2.0 stands for introspect. Introspect. Introspect about who you truly are. One of my favorite stories is about Carl Sagan, the famous scientist. In 1989, Carl Sagan made an unusual request of NASA. The Voyager had crossed Saturn and it was drifting away. So Carl Sagan requested NASA that can we turn the Voyager around and take one last picture of the Earth. Now, NASA being NASA, a bureaucratic organization, there was a lot of back and forth, but eventually, the president of NASA stepped in, and on 14th February 1990, they actually turned the Voyager in a very complex maneuver and took a picture of the Earth. If you Google it, you will find it, there's a ray of the sun, and in that ray, there's a tiny little dot. And Carl Sagan called it the pale blue dot. And then he got a little philosophical. He said, we consider ourselves as the center of the universe. We are not. You are just that pale blue dot. So ladies and gentlemen, please remember one thing. You may think of yourself as center of the universe. You're not. The universe has got billions and billions of galaxies of there. There's one galaxy called Milky Way. You're not the center of Milky Way. The Milky Way has got a long tail. We are not even the center of that bloody tail. On one end of the tail is a solar system. We are not even the center of that solar system. We are the third rock which is revolving around the center of that solar system. Moral of the story, don't take yourself too seriously. But there's another side to this coin as well. Do remember, everyone that you love, everyone that you care for is on that pale blue dot. So make sure that you're taking very good care of it. That's the only pale blue dot that we have. And which is why our scriptures always said that you must try and understand your relationship with the universe around you. Why? Because the moment you understand your relationship, you automatically understand what your responsibility is. If I know that this is my father, I automatically know what my responsibility towards him is. If I know this is my friend, I automatically know what my responsibility towards him is. And therefore, figure out, Dyav Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Prithvi Shanti, Rapa Shanti. What's your relationship with earth? What is your relationship with water? What is your relationship with soil? What is your relationship with air? Because the moment you figure out these relationships, you will automatically figure out what your responsibilities towards them is. And therefore, please remember, ladies and gentlemen, it is this Bani 2.0 which will help us in making sure that we reach the country and we create the country which is a country of our imagination. As professionals, as institutions, as leaders, our responsibility is threefold. First, to innovate with integrity. Second, to collaborate across sectors, industry, academia, government, civil society. And third, to mentor the next generation, ensuring that ambition is matched and backed with character. Ladies and gentlemen, let's remember, Swadeshi in the 21st century does not mean isolation. It means global resilience and relevance, which is built on local resilience. India's future is bright not because it is guaranteed, but because it is being built as we speak. Built by entrepreneurs who dare, by scholars who question, by professionals who execute, and by institutions that endure. Over the next 2 days, may we challenge assumptions, may we exchange ideas, but with humility. May we leave not only informed, but inspired. Let this conclave be a space where conviction meets competence, where identity meets innovation, where India does not merely rise, but leads with responsibility. And I warmly welcome each one of you to this collective journey. Let us innovate, let us build, and let us shape India that is Swadeshi, Swabhavik, Swanirmit. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.